Okay guys, moving to France beyond 90 days. Once again, thank you all for your patience, and hopefully you find this useful so far. The idea is just over this next 30 minutes, I'm just going to run you through, I guess, what people would usually pay to have a consultation with me to understand what the requirements are in terms of moving to France now in 2025 and what's going to change maybe towards 2026 as well, and those kind of requirements. Of course, as you will all potentially know, French Connections HCB, we administer mainly, of course, all of the requirements for visa applications and residency applications. But unlike any other, we have a kind of network within our business which administers these requests through legal terms. So we have an office in Paris where we'll have paralegals, and our High Court attorney actually works from our London office. I know it's a bit strange, but there's rules against private individuals that are not lawyers in France to be part of a business. So we actually created that business in London. But we manage all of those applications in-house. Equally, registration of businesses and things like that, we also do in-house. So we're fully registered to be able to do that. And then with the help of our partners that you've met here today, for instance, Money Corp, etc., we can open up currency accounts to be able to make your transfers to purchase houses, and equally, of course, be able to apply for your visa. Right now, if you're looking to move permanently to France, you are entitled to go to France on a 90-day period. You don't need a visa to buy a house in France. And the lady and gentleman back there have actually bought a house without a visa, and Tom and Dory that are from Colorado have also bought a house without having a visa. And often the house purchase can be done during that 90-day period. But equally, for those that are looking to start a business in France, things have evolved quite drastically, and the thing is that we are so fortunate because of people like yourselves eventually that give us all of the feedback of things that are happening during these applications. We've got very much up-to-date stuff, you know, the actual real action rather than actual legal stuff. And that means that we're always in this country going to be relying on your feedback from what happens at what we call the TLS contact appointment. So for those that don't know, in the UK, you will not be going to the French consulate to apply for your visa. So for the US, it's the same actually, by the way, guys. But in the UK, the French government subcontracted to a company called TLS Contact, and they are very much so, I wouldn't say like a Ryanair kind of service, but not far off, where you're going to go booking, go to the appointment, they're going to check your credentials, and they do a very, very good job of it, to be fair. It's fairly efficient to be able to get through the process, and it's fairly quick. So if you wanted an appointment today in the UK, you'd probably only be waiting for around a month to actually have a fixed date. And then once you've sat your appointment, you might only wait 7 to 10 working days to get your visa back. We, by the way, within our services, guarantee every aspect of the application. So we're like Amazon. If you contract us, it's a fixed price, and if we don't deliver, we'll refund you. Of course, we never look at the refund. We'll reapply, we'll find a solution. And it's fair to say that, you know, it's not all great success stories. We do, you know, people have complex applications, and for those that I know a few of you are talking about businesses in France, etc., you've got to bear in mind that things have evolved. If you watched a video of me like a year ago, I'd have said to you, well, the easiest way to go into France is to apply for a visa as a visitor and then change your status once you arrive in France. That's not really longer the case. I mean, literally these last few months, we've seen that can become more and more complex. So actually applying for the right type of visa is more important than ever right now. The problem is with these types of visas, for those, I know there's a few of you thinking about businesses or even being self-employed and working on French soil, you've really got to navigate around grey areas. And Géraud, our business partner and chartered accountant, will tell you that this is completely a grey area, because remote working did not exist when the laws were written from a tax point of view. So if you are considering continue to work from the UK and you're going to be living in France, even if it's on a short-term visa, by the way, there can be tax implications. So it's always worth looking at those. But equally from a visa perspective, well, remote working actually kind of could work as long as the company doesn't have any economic or financial ties to France and that you're not operating on French soil, attending any meetings, etc. But that kind of is contradictory to the tax side of things. So these are very, very grey waters in certain senses. And also, well, of course, Brexit has created an awful lot more paperwork for you guys. Well, you'd think so, but actually it hasn't all of that much. So Brexit hasn't necessarily made this process any more complex. It's just making now you have to pay attention to all of the things that people should have been doing when they arrived in France. So with context of that, you will be able to, of course, stay 90 days, but you could also settle long-term and apply for a long-stay visa. Now, that long-stay visa could take several formats, and of course, one of them being maybe just a 6-month visa. So for those that are not wanting to permanently move to France, but would like to spend more time at their second home, for instance, well, that's possible. And the 6-month visa can come in combination to your 90 days, giving you a total of 9 months. If you speak with Géraud, he might be able to say to you, well, actually, you're not becoming a tax resident in France, that's fine, as long as you stick to those particular circumstances and your assets, for instance, are not in France. But for most of you, if you're looking to settle long-term, if you're looking to work, well, again, this is where you need to have a chat with us and make sure that you've got the right type of application in place. Allow yourself some time. 6 months probably before you apply for your visa application is where we would like to, on average, take you on board as a new client. And equally, if you're looking to do a business visa application, probably allow yourself a little bit more time than that, because we're going to have to do things like create business plans. We're now going to have to contact the préfecture in your local region. And by the way, none of this information is available online. This is actually fresh information that you'll hear from me today, but this is us doing literally thousands of applications a year. We now have to apply to the préfecture where you wish to install and plant your business to get authorization to create that business in that area, so that there's not, too many bakers, for instance, because there's a lot of bakers, right? I think in Mirande, where Tom and Dory have bought, I counted 10 the other day. How do they all work? Anyway, but the point being is that they want that, and that can take time. And that really needs to be put in place. It's not mandatory, but we'd severely recommend doing it before you actually go to your visa appointment, as well as your business plan and all of the other credentials that you need to put in place. Today, you've had the chance to get quotes from Bruno on health insurance. That is one of the things that you will need as a requirement unless you have hit retirement age and you want to use an S1 form. And this is very specific to the UK. Tom and Dory, you don't know what an S1 form is. You never need to know what that is. Really, all the S1 is basically you've been paying into the UK system all of your life, and you're now for retirement age, and you can actually apply to have that form. That temporarily signs you out of the NHS. Be aware of that. So what that means is there's a period of time, if you use that S1 instead of having a private medical policy, during that period of time, you're not really covered by anyone. The good news is France, you can pay for medical fees. They're not very expensive. And eventually when you get a social security number, which Bruno will have spoken to you about, which is then translates into what we call a carte vitale, which is the equivalent to your NHS card in the UK. You'll then be able to claim back any fees that you have spent on medical expenses. But that comes at a cost. So during a period of time, you're not covered. So we would always usually advise to take a private medical policy. Mainly, we look at annual policies because they're just far better value for money. And in reality, to enter the French medical system might take 6 to 8 months minimum, plus the 90 days that you have to spend on the soil before you can apply. So again, if you haven't had a chat with Bruno today, go and get a quote from him, because he'll be able to tell you about the best policies that are available, and of course continue with things like that. Thank you, merci Bruno. What else? Well, you'll need an address. A lot of you have already bought houses in France, so that's great. You can use your home address. That's wonderful. For those that are not as lucky to have purchased a property, please bear in mind that temporary accommodation is really something that they look at, and they want to make sure that you've got the finances to continue to pay for that. And ideally, you want a 90-day booking if you're going to use something like an Airbnb or such. If you do need help searching for properties, actually, Jero's sister works within our team, and we help search for rental properties on a longer term. And actually, if you ask Tom and Dory very nicely, they might even rent their place when they're not there. But we actually have our own network of properties that we own and that we continue to buy and build and renovate, as you've seen on videos, so that you can rent and use those if you fancy trying before you buy, which, by the way, I thoroughly recommend for those that haven't purchased to rent somewhere, if possible, before they purchase somewhere, to understand the region, the area, etc., because it does vary an awful lot. And third part is financial. So the financial criteria. Now, this doesn't mean that there can be, of course, variations on these things, but generally speaking, the financial side of things is pretty clear. You only need to be able to provide minimum French wage per month, per person, per adult. I don't think anyone's got children here and moving to France with children, but if you did, it's plus 20% per child. And as we're being recorded today, probably this will be online. So yes, if you've got children, plus 20%. But in terms of adults, at the moment, and this is variable, it's 1,389 euros per month per person. And of course, in terms of that, can be just held in a liquid bank account. So just be careful there. Of course, liquid means that you've got direct access to it. We've seen in the past, if you put a whole load of money in one account and then apply with that money in there, and you've just put the money in there for the visa application, well, guess what? They might question what your plan is. Also, what are you going to do once you get to France? Are you going to buy a house, and how much will be left? So it's very much about building this picture that you've got financial stability. The way that I always look at it is, for the guys that are in finance, applying for a mortgage, right? It's like applying for a mortgage. You want to show that you've got everything ticked and that there's financial stability on that income. So for most of you, selling your assets, moving to France permanently, pretty easy, right? You've got your money in your account, you sold your house, or if you're in process of course, in terms of financial advice with the guys at Huxton or at with Jero's advice, you'll be able to understand that you're not going to be liable for capital gains, even if you did that within a period of time of actually moving to the country. So that's all good. But make sure that you've planned proficiently with closing your accounts, such as ISAs and things like that, which can be taxed in France. For the Americans watching or here, of course, it's not an ISA that you'll worry about, but more things like IRAs and any mutual funds and stocks, etc., that you might hold, which are not taxable in the US, but are in France. So our advice, always, if you have a consultation with me, will be to say, look, okay, we're going to build you a roadmap. These are all of the things that you need to do. But before you sign up with us, you need to do 3 things. One is speak with Bruno, get yourself a quote on your insurance policies to understand what's available, because we've had the unlucky events in the past to see that some policies are ridiculously expensive, and to pay more than 3,500, 4,000 euros for a premium policy is not good. Like, you shouldn't be paying that kind of money for private medical care. So just be careful of that. Second part is opening up a currency account, and we'll do that with Toby's help, just because you'll save compared to your regular banks, and it's safer. You can do direct transfers to your notaires, etc., and we can even do that for business. So that actually works in the interim. Of course, opening a French bank account, we mentioned it with BNP. It's not mandatory. It can help. For those that are looking to rent, it's definitely something that you should do, because showing a landlord in France that you've got a French account, they just feel reassured. So for those that are thinking of renting before buying, very key part there. And of course, in terms of financial advice, the guys at Hoxton will also give you a free consultation in terms of that first stage. First, I would always say those are the 3 things that you need to do before you actually even apply for your visa. Then the selection of visa. Well, of course, you can speak with us, you can book a consultation, you can find information on our website, on our YouTube. But generally speaking, once you've selected your visa, you're going to then be booking that visa appointment. You're going to be creating all of the file that goes with it, and you're going to go to the appointment. If you're lucky enough to work with us, we're going to tell you exactly what's going to happen during that appointment, because guess what? We've got hundreds of people going through the process that give us loads of feedback. I actually had one guy that was a police inspector. Thanks, Andy, if you're watching, because he gave me such a detailed report of actually what was asked and said and where you sit down, etc., which is so useful for people's nerves before they actually go. And I'm joking about it, but it's extremely important. And that call is done with me before your appointment, a few days before, just to give you the latest, latest feedback on what it is that's going to happen during that appointment. And it's just, to reduce your stress levels as well as much as we possibly can. It's an unfamiliar environment. It's just easier if you've got someone that can tell you what you're going to expect. In terms of turnaround, I mentioned, pretty quick in the UK. So you'll have your decision. They'll keep their poker face till the very end. So you will not know what the decision on the outcome of your visa is until you receive your visa with hopefully the visa in your passport page. And they're going to take your passport away, guys, by the way. So for those planning a cruise or anything in the meantime, you've got to make sure that you've either applied for an auxiliary passport, which is possible, or that you're prepared to obviously hand it to the embassy, to TLS Contact, which will send it to the French embassy. The French embassy make the decision. TLS Contact don't. So if any of you in the room today choose to do this by yourselves and without our assistance, which is absolutely fine, loads of people do, just be aware that during that appointment, there's no decision making that's made. They're just there to process your data, collect your file, take your biometrics, and send it all the way to the French authorities in London, in the consulate, which will review your file. No need to write a letter or an essay saying how much you love French wine and how great your holiday was. That's not going to help. They just want factual aspects. Have you got the right medical policy? Have you got the right funds? Have you got somewhere safe to live? Simple as that. Those are the 3 things to consider, okay? If you're creating a business, this is really important. If you're creating a business, make sure that is absolutely watertight on top of your business. And I'd go as far as to say, doing your personal application on your own is probably more than doable. Doing a business application, you're probably going to need a bit of help. It's quite something to do, and don't go and pay for a law firm specialized in immigration law, thousands of euros to do this. We've got our own lawyers, we've got our own legal team, and we do fixed prices because of our volume. So you get the best deal with us if that's what you want to do. And we'll have somebody in our team, 2 people, and Juliette being one of them. Annabelle unfortunately couldn't travel, she was sick, but they will be our key account managers, and they administer throughout our business and look after your applications, bookings, etc. We manage everything. I'm sure Tom and Dora will be able to be testimony of that they're pretty good at what we do. So in terms of that, we can offer you like a concierge experience, I guess, around all of the admin. But those visa applications are going to be something that, of course, are usually the most stressful thing for you before you move. Don't stress about it. It's okay, right? What you might want to consider is what happens after the visa. And I'm not saying I'm stressed about it, but Juliette was saying to me today, look, things are getting tougher, Rich. It's kind of, we've got to stop people doing this because the process itself, and no one has actually gone live with this, which we will do very soon. But there's 2 things to consider. What happens and what are the language requirements? Because I can see quite a few of you are going to be less than 65 years old when you apply for your permanent residency. And if that's the case, as of 2026, there will be, and as of now, there is actually an A1 level of French to achieve. I'm sure Céline will be able to tell you that A1 is pretty basic. But A2, of course, is a little more complex, and you need to work towards that if you're going to be less than 65 years old when you're going to do your application for residency. If you want my advice, I would say also just work towards that, because on a personal level, it can be extremely isolating to not be able to speak the language. And I think there's an acceptancy within that you might never be yourself in your own language in that second language, but working towards that from a cultural perspective will definitely help your move. And we see, of course, with thousands of applications a year, unfortunately, we do see people go back to their home country. And I do think that an awful lot of that is due to the language and the acquisition of such. But I believe that language, if you're not moving straight away, I also believe that language tests might be installed fairly soon on the actual visa application, which, to be fair, I completely agree with. I think if A1 was something that was required, it would probably help everyone when they arrive in France. But those are very achievable targets. If you want more information, you can ask Celine, of course, today about how we can go about helping you with that. But more importantly, they might also higher the age, because if you were married to a French national, I think Juliette will be able to say that it's actually 70 years old now for the A2 level, or A1 level currently, and A2 level as of 2026. So my point being is actually if you're married to a French person, they really want you to be able to speak French. They don't understand why you wouldn't, right? So I'm guessing that if they're doing that for the French, they might also do it for us. So you might be thinking you're scot-free because for once it's good to be old, right? But then it actually might not be quite as good. So working towards that A2 is very important, and of course it helps on so many levels. But just to talk you through what happens, right? If you want to picture it, it's like a map of how you're going to apply for your visa and then apply for your residency. And you're going to start off with getting all of this advice, because that's great. We've taken it all and put it in one place if you choose to work with us. Second part is you're going to apply for your visa. You're going to enter France. You're going to validate your visa. Okay, so this is done online now. You don't need to go anywhere. You're then going to have a medical exam. People always say, oh, I'm scared about the medical exam, can I fail it? It's not a failed test. It will happen. You'll have to go to your biggest local town. There'll be blood tests, urine tests. They want to know essentially what your health level is, and it's a statistic for the whole country. It's because they care about us, or you newly becoming French. So don't worry about that. It's not a failed test, but it has to be done by the time before you apply for your residency card. Then, after 90 days, great news is you can do loads of things. You can apply for a French healthcare card, a social security number. Be careful with that for remote workers, because Gero will be able to tell you that lots of people forget that if you're still working and you benefit from the social system but you're not paying into it, guess what? They want money. It might not be double taxed, but you'll have to pay into the system. Now, in certain cases, that could also be income that's come from other sources. So be very careful. They'll take your net worth or net annual income in place. So again, it might not be taxed, but social charges are different to tax. They feel the same, but they're two separate bodies. So please consider that. In terms of your social application or entering the Carte Vitale process, it's going to take some time. So you probably need Bruno's policies. We often see it. Unfortunately, if you watch our YouTube channel, we actually had a client that fell down the stairs, broke her hip within 1 week of arrival. It happens, right? And then in which case we were very happy to make sure that Bruno had actually put a premium policy in place which covered for those kind of fees, which is extremely important, of course. And in general, that will be then your ability to get into that system will take, as I said, 6, 7, 8 months. That's all done online. For those that I know the lady and gentleman there had already purchased a house, you've done your car registration, all of these kind of things. I tell you what, guys, if you want to do the application for the Carte Vitale yourselves, be my guest. We won't put it in the package, because clearly it is actually an absolute admin nightmare. We are in a full transition in France, as we were in the UK many years ago when the DVLA all went online, if you remember. And essentially the process is trying to go completely online in France, and it's just not working well at the moment. I don't know if it's lack of funds or a disparity between each offices, but it's just a very, very difficult process. You're going to have to follow this up and through and send recorded delivery letters and call and go to the appointments and send everything again. It is extremely frustrating. And from a business point of view, if we could avoid doing this, we would. but actually you need it as a service, and that's what we sell as a package. Other things that you'll be able to do is apply for a French tax code, and numéro d'identification fiscale, or NIF, is going to be required to be able to do your French tax return. Bear in mind, you can do a tax return as a non-resident. It's actually allowed. It's not necessarily mandatory, but you can do that if you were just to buy a second home in France. And if you don't yet own a home, getting a NIF is very difficult. So you've got to get on to this pretty quick. Other things, of course, well, your tax return, your French tax return, will administer that with Gero if you're one of our lucky clients. And all of these things, including potentially exchanging your driver's license, if you can, starting that process within 90 days of arrival is very much recommended. Why? Because when you go to your residency application, which will happen in France at your local prefecture, this time, by the way, I forgot to mention, but the application in the UK is all in English, right? When you go to France, no more. All in French. So that application being in French, if you rock up to that appointment with lots and lots of French registration documents, it shows that you really are there to stay. And it, of course, increases your chances of your application being successful. That's, I guess, the key tip that I would say is not rocket science, just an awful lot of French admin, which proves that you're really going to be staying in the country. Application success rate goes up. No language requirement for that 1 year application. So we've gone back to this full pattern. You've applied for your visa, you've arrived in France, you've done your carte vitale application, that's going to take months. You do your driver's license, you do your tax code, you do your tax return. We register you if you're, again, using our services. We will help you open a bank account, get a cell phone, buy a car, rent a property. All of these things are part of the services that we provide. They register you with a doctor, call a vet, get a vet passport. All of these things don't seem extremely difficult one by one, but they can be quite overwhelming. And as I mentioned, it is going to be an awful lot easier for you to apply for your residency application if you've done all of this, right? So, and guess what? 10 months goes quite quick. And if you have entered as a visitor and you do want to change status, you want to run a gîte now, or you want to do, I don't know, pottery classes, or anything that's, completely different to what your initial plan was, which happens, you can change your status. It is becoming more complex, and therefore, if you're able to do so, I would really recommend looking at a different type of visa at this stage, based on our current information. And that's, as I said, pretty new. And overall, that visa application and that then carte de séjour application, it will be called a carte de séjour temporaire, which means it's temporary. It's a 12-month card. This is the only route, unless you're on the business visa, to gain residency in France, by the way. There's no other secret methods. So you're all going to go through this. When you go through that application, that's going to happen in French at your local prefecture. It's actually probably going to be quite quick, quite underwhelming. Don't panic about that one either, because if you've done all of the things that I've just recommended, it will definitely work. It will go through. However, you might be in limbo because it takes some time, and so you can't leave the country whilst that's happening. So again, having a little bit of support around that application might be useful. That's all we would say in terms of actually making sure that you feel comfortable with that process. And the good news is, if you have A2 level of French, once you've renewed that carte de séjour once, so we're looking at a 24-month time span here, or time frame. So visa, then carte de séjour temporaire. At the end of that temporary carte de séjour, if you've done all of the things that we've recommended, and if you're less than 65 years old, and if you have A2 level of French, you can apply for une carte de séjour pluriannuelle, multiple years, so 5 years or more. And that means that the prefecture your local government body will be able to say, okay, well, these guys are fully settled in France, they've got all the financial requirements, we're happy to give them a 5-year residency card. And that's what people refer to as residency cards. Usually they'll give you a 3-year, a 5-year, and then a 10-year. That's generally speaking the kind of format. But they have almighty power. If they think that you're fully settled and you've got 1 million in the French bank account, hey, guess what? They might give you a 10-year card straight away. And so why choose us? In terms of our all-inclusive packages, I would say just for the visas themselves and residency cards, you're looking at around €6,000 for that process. And if you want to add to those, it's all fixed prices. Of course, we've helped thousands of people do this and make this happen. I'm sure that Tom and Dory will be happy to have a chat with you, share their experience as well of buying a property through us and actually renovating it and potentially looking to move with the admin side of things as well. And of course, if you have any questions, happy to put a rolling mic through. If not, happy days, we can go and have a drink at the bar, guys. No, I'm only joking. But yeah, obviously check us out on YouTube, all the channels, etc. Now, the last part of the format of the day, of course, if some people have got some questions, we'll do a rolling mic. But you've still got an opportunity to sit down with all the partners, notably open up accounts with Toby if you haven't already done so. And then if you wanted to join us, we've booked a place at the bar, so all of the partners and yourselves are more than welcome to join us. And that will be the end of the day. For those that do want to stay over for a meal this evening, there's still places available, so just let us know. And yeah, I think, again, thank you all so much for coming. I know it was pretty much a difficult day to get here, so thank you again. And thank all of the partners for coming. So again, thank you guys.